There it is.
Welcome,
Yeah.
one and all, to the This Had Better Be Good podcast, where
I
we use
was
cool voices.
I was saying I remember being a volunteer at a radio station, and eventually I worked my way up to graveyard shift. But you would be in the studio with these people and they'd talk normally, and then they get on the mic and they'd just take on this entirely different kind of, and it was just really sort of shocking. You'd be like, what, why did you do that? Aren't you embarrassed?
Aren't you embarrassed? Just a quick question. You're embarrassed right now, right? Because you should be.
I feel a little embarrassed.
I'm
And
embarrassed for you, and I would feel more comfortable if you felt embarrassed for yourself, because then I feel like we'd be on the same page.
totally. Totes, man. Well, how are you? What's new? Have you won everything? Is everything victorious? Great.
Let's not wait for the answer. Let's just congratulate you and move on.
You
Katrina
made
has COVID. She just got COVID.
Bummer.
So there's that. It's happening.
Yeah. You know what's a strategy for that is to try to not get COVID.
Mm-hmm.
You
That's
know?
one strategy.
Yeah. Because getting it, sometimes that leads to COVID.
Getting COVID leads to COVID, pretty much.
So, well, I mean,
We're separating. She's
we're
hitting her
separating
kinda
tends
hard.
to have a different meaning than I think you're intending here. She got COVID. We're
She got
separating.
really separated. Look, you gotta have boundaries. You gotta know your boundaries and say, look,
I think the word you were looking for was quarantining or staying in different parts of the abode.
look. I'm reading a book about boundaries. Apparently, a person doesn't exist without boundaries.
And so I'm all in.
Um, I have been reading a book. Somebody recommended a book about boundaries, and I get it, like in the abstract, but in the actual, my lived experience, like I don't actually know what that really would mean. And so I'm listening to an audiobook about it. I'm like a good 3 hours in, and still I have zero clue about a boundary that I should find out and then
It's
defend.
all like theoretical, sort of the idea of boundaries and the importance of whatever, but you're like concretely,
I'm
how does
like, I'm
that?
looking, yes, you're telling me that I'm not a real person until I have boundaries. I would like to know
What's
one that
what's
I
step
could.
one? Yeah.
Yeah. Could you
Where
give me some starters?
where
Could
do
you
I?
just give me like
Yeah.
potential boundaries you might like?
Where do I put my foot, and what do I hold on to with my hand?
Yeah. What are we talking about here? Can
Yeah.
you give me some examples? And I mean, there are some examples. A lot of the examples are like from the dating scene, like, oh,
Mm.
this person does this. Then you just like, I'm sorry, I'm walking, I know it's like, that doesn't really apply, and all the examples, it's just, so I mean, it could be just that I'm so. If the boundaries is a big bound, if there's a border, maybe I'm just so like boring and wandering around the center of my existence that I don't even get there,
You're
or
not even
maybe
encountering a boundary.
I.
What?
They say if you don't have boundaries in your relationships, I feel completely attacked and yet not given any tools to deal with it, because it's like they're sort of saying, if you what is it if you don't have boundaries in a relationship, then you're enmeshed, and
Uh,
that's a problem. That's bad, because if the place that you connect with somebody is at your edge or something. That's like, it sounds cool, but I'm like, what are we talking about?
I love that you've
Like,
invested
you're
this many hours and this much like intense desire to improve into this without
in an
any.
area that I don't understand at all. Like, I don't,
You're
it's
like
not.
way. It's like having watched something, but it's like you've invested too much time in watching it, so you don't quite want to bail out on it, but you're not really enjoying it, But you're just like, but I've already put 2.5 hours into this.
So why are you studying? Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I'm on a particular field of study that wasn't exactly inspired by anything. Like, wasn't that I got zapped by a
Right. I gotta
something, and
go
I was, oh,
research a boundaries so I can fix this part of my life. It's like it
right.
came to you, but you're completely bought in. It sounds like you're sold on the need. You
Well,
just can
I've been
identify.
just listening to 3 hours of propaganda about why it's so important. I mean, it's kind of one of these situations where I'm like, okay, I believe you. It sounds important. literally, could you give me like what are 7 boundaries that somebody should have? I mean,
I
like,
just
just
blew
give me
a
the starter.
I blew a boundary this morning. I don't know if this is qualifies under what your book says, but I was sort of like, as a kid, if I didn't get up on time and if I didn't get out on time, I would be sort of like urged along the whole time. Come on, hurry up! It's only 5 minutes or whatever. So I never really developed my own sense of accountability for getting out on time, and that was a little harder. So then with my kids, I really want them to have their own accountability, and they don't like being late. So it's on you.
Just leave them alone.
Yeah, it's on you.
Yeah.
I'll walk you to school. Just let me know when you're ready. And then when they're late, they don't like it. It kind of works. It kind of doesn't. But this morning, I was late, and she was like, "Can you take me?" at the last minute. And I was like, "No, this is the thing." And she sort of got choked up, and so I caved. But I was like, "But I don't want to do this regularly." This is making myself feel better about caving and poorly setting her up for her life.
Right. I'm giving you a yellow card. Excuse me. I'm giving you a yellow card on this one. But if it happens again, let me tell you, you're walking by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you're just not going to school.
Right. Well, and so how would your book weigh in on that? Would your book say
I have no idea. It really is. It's a sea of abstractions that are beyond me right now. I'm hoping it's all going to come together.
But you haven't bailed out. Do you bail out on reading books that you're not enjoying?
You mean as opposed to listening to them?
Yeah, I mean listening or reading. But do you bail out on books? I guess I'm asking because I don't. I have this. Well, it won't shock you to know about me that I have this like thoroughness complex. And so I could be like 2/3 of the way through a book that I'm just like, it's just not connecting for me. And I'll be like, but I'm 2/3 in, I got to slog it out. And that slogging can take months, but I'm going to get there little by little, very little enjoyment at a time. When there's a world of like 8 million books that are great out there.
Yeah. I think I'm halfway there. Like I do that, this similar thing. I do that, but then also, there are some that defeat me. I am defeatable.
Oh yeah, I'm defeatable too. Yeah, but what I've discovered is that I just need to read like page turner fiction. There you go. It's not the most.
I don't read much fiction. I want to read more fiction. I did read a fiction this year, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, fiction. I do. It's funny that you say that you want to read, because I sort of feel guilty for like, that's all I read is just like, give me sort of page turnery stories. I just like stories. And when everyone's like, oh, the most fascinating book about the such and such, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get through it.
You're pre-bailing. You're like, I'm not going to get stuck into that one.
Well, I've been just a lot happier since I admitted to myself that I just can't get through nonfiction. That said, I did just read a Michael Lewis book that was nonfiction that was quite good, but
it's quite good. I wonder if a book feels better if you know the author, if you've met the author. Like all of a sudden, it's just like you're appreciating it more. When you're reading from some famous person, it's just like, this is better be good. But if it's like somebody you know, then you're like, wow, this guy's smart, and I talked to him.
I don't know. I didn't expect to be that interested in the book, but it's just like, God dang it, this guy can make anything interesting. Well, dadgummit.
That is fascinating. That is how I feel about a lot of stuff. I actually just found out about a podcast.
What is that?
It's called Planet Critical. And the reason I found out about it is because there was somebody talking about sort of really about local food, about like communities getting together and doing food. I was like, what? And I sort of had to do a bit of internet going this way and that in order to figure out where it came from, and finally found it. And it was on this Planet Critical, and it's great. It's like, I think I was, about a year ago, I was talking to people about like, I want to do a podcast, and this is basically doing it way better than I could have ever done it.
So does that give you pleasure, or does that give you the pang it would give me of like, oh, someone got to there before I did?
I don't think I don't feel the pang of someone got there before I did, because I feel like if I had done it, I just it wouldn't have been nearly as good as this.
Mhm.
And the host is a is a journalist who's got like experience and connections,
Mhm.
and she's just doing the whole thing right, and she's super smart. She knows everything, like all the different references, which is great. So I just feel like, yeah,
Whereas I'm just a dummy.
I'm just like, I come to the table like, hey, guess what, guys? What if we do? What I find is that, though, that a lot of the things that I come up with in the craziness is like, this is why I like this stuff, is because they're saying basically what I come up with in my own Tourette'sness. So it feels validating. Um, and also, like, they all have references for and then they say, and the reason that this is right is because of all of these reasons. And I'm like sketching down those, like, wait, this book, I need to get these books on my bookshelves and have them highlighted and stuff, in case anybody says, well, why do you think that? And I'll say,
you have to build your bookshelf in back of your Zoom background and then put it prominently.
Yeah, I wonder if that would look cool with like book with guitars, and then like books next to the guitars,
like little tiny bookshelves in between the guitars.
Yeah,
guitar reading.
And then you could have
I play music. I read. I play music. I read.
I read. Yeah, just in terms of self-presenting. I want you to know some things about me. First thing, these are my instruments, which I play, and these are the books I read, which are very smart people books.
And these are the tiny cactuses I water periodically.
I know everything about these cactuses. I know where they came from.
Cacti.
I know their genus and their species, and I know the special watering techniques.
Anyway, what were we talking about today?
So just know that if you're wondering about the credibility of the present speaker,
I haven't seen this. This is a new. That's a new personage that I haven't seen out of your library. Were you inventing that just now, or is that one of your characters when you go to audition for Saturday Night Live? Is that one on?
Yeah, maybe this is new. Yeah,
is that one new, or that's not from an existing library? It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Which is it? Is it the pretentious podcaster?
Or I think pretentious. I'm not sure. It would have to be a podcaster.
Because
it's slightly understated. You know, when impressions are too far, they're too obvious, they're too forehead slappy, it's a little much. But that, I think, I'm a fan of slightly understated. You know, because you read. It gives you,
like, is this person serious?
30%, and then you read the other 60 or 70 from there.
You know, I had an idea. Speaking of pretentious, I had an idea for promoting my next show, and I was going to say
music performance show. Yes,
and it was going to be a picture of me looking very serious, and it's going to say across my face in sort of big all caps, Fev. Next line is Eitza, and then the next line would say fucking genius.
That's pretty good.
I was thinking that, like, come on, somebody's gonna see that, and then A, you're probably gonna know it's a joke, and B, though, it's a little bit of a sort of a challenge, and it maybe does sort of touch on the paradox of my character, which is a moron and an idiot, but also kind of, it's just like, it's like
kind of genius.
But I'm kind of a genius.
Yeah. Would you go with like a holding chin to really make clear it was joking, or you like sort of like you're not quite sure?
I'd like to go for some people being like, does this person actually think that? And the irony is that I do. Well, I mean, that's what's actually funny. That's what's the funniest part of it is that I'm in on the joke, but also.
Yeah, I like it. It also there's a curiosity gap thing there where you just be like, I kind of have to go see.
Right. It makes you need to challenge it. You'd be like, is it serious? I got to find out.
Yeah.
And then I think that a lot of people would come into it thinking, oh, it's a joke, and then at the end they might think, it's kind of genius.
It is interesting because it's sort of like Inception in a way. You know, if you're just like Fef Seitza does some songs, you come there and you might not even, you're not going to sit there debating whether this guy's a genius. But the guy says, I'm a fucking genius.
Like
you're like, well, I have to weigh it now.
I have to engage in this question.
Well, that song was pretty good. Maybe this dude is a genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes
it's like a high anchor on the menu. That's the chef special, $35. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, weigh that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and part of it is inspired because of the fact that I had too much to drink when hanging out with some friends, and I was just like, I'll buy you a song, and this song is a masterpiece. And it was one of my songs, and I played it, and they were like, it's a masterpiece. And I was like, man, it's the first time I ever got the reaction I was looking for, and it was because I told them.
Yeah, there's really something interesting to that. Yeah.
But I do think it does invite the listener to. I mean, if you're just sort of and generally I do the exact opposite because I'm so afraid of revealing my ego, revealing my self delusion of grandeur, that I will go, oh, this song I wrote is stupid. Or
I'm a dummy.
Like barrel through it or whatever, and
I'm terrible.
And it just doesn't set people up to like.
No, that's right.
If there's some abstraction involved, like in the lyrics or something, and you're just sort of like, knocking through a song, it's like, I didn't get it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're sort of saying, this is, and that's actually one of the things I said, the second song I played that night where I was just like, this is amazing. Like I said, every word of this song has been, is the perfect word for that moment, and it changes a little bit from part to part, and the subtle changes are key to why this song is so great.
As I was explicating my genius, here's what I said.
Which is totally against the rules. But I mean, of course, it was a friendly audience.
Well,
but
I think there's really something to it. There's like, I think I've always felt like the wrapper around something is so important to how the thing is perceived, right? And so that's the difference of someone introducing you with reverence versus you introducing yourself. Like, not you particularly, but one, here's something I did. And here it is, and then someone's like, "Oh, that's really cool." Versus someone being like, "Dude, you got to hear this this thing that Fef did, this thing that Sam did. You got to check it out." And then you're like, Then I play it, and then it's the same exact thing, and someone's like, "Oh, that's amazing," but they have been introduced in this wrapper, and so usually, I feel like you have to have someone else build you up that way. That's interesting in this use case, where you're just like, I'm going to build myself up and put it up there. But you could actually see how that would work for people too. Just like the confidence, so much of like performance is confidence, and the confidence to put it out there and be like, this is great. I'm so like, this is.
Challenge me. It's like, fight me.
Yeah. Come at me, bro.
Come at me, bro. One of the speaking of fictions, one of the fiction books that I read once, and it wasn't actually much of a fiction. Maybe it was a fictionalized memoir. But
memoir.
It was, I don't exactly know if it was this, but it was a novel of some sort. But it was drawing on the dude's life. But it was called A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius.
Oh, Dave Eggers.
I've heard of this book, Dave Eggers. Yeah, and I saw that book and I had to read it. I mean, and it's just like
that's one of the most brilliant titles ever.
Yeah, and like that's what we're looking for. You pick up a fiction. What do you want? A staggering work of heartbreaking genius, whatever it is. That's what
line you could never forget. The most memorable line ever. A staggering. A heartbreaking.
It's the start breaking. It's the ridge break. No. But if you were to,
Steve Martin had a great,
might be a staggering work of Heartbreaking Genius, but like
it's called Wuthering Heights.
You see that Wuthering Heights next to Heartbreaking Work, you're sort of like, well, this is what I'm looking for.
Did you ever listen to old Steve Martin comedy?
What's that?
Did you ever listen to old Steve Martin comedy?
Not very much.
He had just unbelievable timing, and one of his jokes is he would do these lead ups, and he was talking about this like advice his grandma gave him, and he'd never forget. And he does it like just the perfect lead up, and then he misspeaks it. He's like, she said to me, always. No, wait, it was never. And he just loses the thread right at the delivery. yeah, his timing was just unbelievable.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he is a talented dude.
Oh, he did well for himself. He really went for it. Oh, Steve. Not enough people know about Steve Martin.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he was a comedian.
Morton.
and he
Did you
had
say
white
Morton?
hair. Steve Martin
Steve Morton.
also had a fish business.
That totally does sound like someone who had a fish business. Well, man, speaking of fish business, shall we end it?
All right. It was thank you for talking. It was thank you for talking.
It was totally thank you for talking. And